We go ahead and get started. Um, Welcome, everybody. I appreciate your willingness to jump on here the afternoon before a long holiday weekend. So um, we're going to promise to keep this as lively as possible. I think this is we've got a full agenda. We've got an interesting agenda. I think. Um, I'm going to be handling the MC duties. Uh, I will not do as good a job as Robin usually does. She's set to board a plane, so I'm gonna do my best to muddle through this. Just some housekeeping that we do have the chat available for those of you who are shy and don't want to verbalize your questions or comments. We would encourage you to do so, however. And when you do participate, for the benefit of our interpreters, if you could identify yourself before speaking, and then also, lastly, for the saving of bandwidth, if you could keep your cameras off until you are speaking or presenting. So I'd be appreciative. Next slide, please. So here's our agenda. This is not 100% accurate, I don't think, but the educational piece of this is going to be a presentation from DRS on contracts. We're going to have a Q&A on the educational topic. We're going to be giving some customer and agency highlights, and then we're going to have some time for open discussion. Next, please. So the highlights in June, we have one listed. Robin reports that all of the agency budgets are approved and linked to FY25 contracts. So that was done prior to the July 1st due date. So congratulations and thank you to all agencies for being so prompt and expeditious in providing those budgets to Robin. I do have one other thing to report. As most of you know, John Silfies and Silfies Media has started to make their way around to the various agencies to begin filming and documenting some of the SWTC efforts, and the early results on that are quite positive. I think agencies have been excited. I know they were out in the western part of the state earlier this week, and also at AID, I believe. So all of you can look forward to John and his group making the rounds. So we're excited to see the results of that as well. Next, please. Here is our graph. Math is hard for me, so please bear with me. But as you can see, we are doing fantastic. We're up to, as of the last report, I think it's as of July 1st. We had 56 SWTC customers engaged in the project. Of those, 47 have been certified and are eligible as DRS customers. And of those 56, and of those numbers, 20 have gained employment. So in this short period of time, I think we've been, depending on what gauge you want to use, we're still looking at on the outside 9 months of this. That during that short period of time, we've got 20 customers who would have been, were it not for your efforts, would have been working in sub-minimum wage and for less than a minimum wage, and are working in meaningful competitive employment, and their lives are significantly better for it. So congratulations, keep up the great work. I mean, this is more than any of us, I think, anticipated at this juncture of the project at the end of the second state fiscal year. So give yourselves a virtual or an actual pat on the back for a job well done. We can't say enough about how thrilled and tickled we are that this project is moving in the direction that it's moving. So, next slide, please. As you know, Robin always comes up with a saying or a word of encouragement. What stands in the way becomes the way. Courage is contagious. So that's something that you can put in your pocket and carry with you as you move down the path. So next slide, please. All right. I'm sorry, I went one too many. So I think at this point, that's all I have. I'm going to turn, like I said, we've got a robust agenda here. So I'm going to turn this over to Aletha Alexander to introduce our special guests from DRS who are going to give a presentation on DRS contracts. So Aletha, if you please.
Okay, great. Awesome. So thank you, Jim. Did I lose? Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Jim, so much. I appreciate that. I am really excited about the topic today. I'm excited that Kristen Wagner and Damian McDonald are joining us today to talk to us about DRS contracts. It's a subject that's come up numerous times, and I know that they know this subject so well. And I know that when I reached out to them, they were wondering why they talk about it all the time, but we just want them to break it down to us today and make it really relevant to us with as it relates to the SWTC project and the agencies that work with the SWTC project. So they have designed a presentation that's going to be specific to what we have asked, what our needs are today. So I'm looking forward to that. So I will then turn it over to Kristen and Damian. Thank you both so much, and I'll give it over to you at this time.
Thank you so much, Aletha. My name's Kristen Wagner. I think most of you probably have heard of our unit, Transition and Community Rehabilitation Services, TCRS for short. I am the manager, and I'll let Damian introduce himself.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Damian McDonald. I'm the assistant manager for TCRS. Truly a pleasure to join you guys today. Anytime there's a call from Aletha or Jim, we are very accommodating. Two of my favorite people. So just glad to join you guys, and hopefully we can provide some insights and some answers to questions to make things clearer and easier along the way.
Absolutely. So this is Kristen again, and I am going to share my screen and turn off my camera because I have to look at the presentation on the big screen. And so if I do that, then you're gonna get my side view, which we're not doing that today. So, or any day. So, but I'm still here. All right. So let's see if I can share in Zoom. All right, let's hope this is the one. Nope, that is not the one. Okay, hang on. Oh, it is the one. It is the one. Okay, so we're gonna share this from the beginning, and then it also fills my whole screen. So there's another reason why I can't do things. Okay, awesome. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so we already introduced ourselves. Okay, so one of the things that we want to do today is, as always, right, we provide a lot of information as a resource. So not necessarily going to hit every single slide. We may say, oh, we put this in here for reference, okay? But the things that we were asked to talk about today were the purpose of job placement contracts, the different contract types, what are the requirements and documentation needed, how do I change my contract, and the TCRS roles. So I think this is a very important slide because prior to referral to a community rehab provider, those customers must be certified and determined eligible for Voc rehab services by certified DRS staff, right? They have to qualify under one of these 4 order of selection categories. After that, they are moved into a IPE, the Individualized Plan for Employment, and a notification of services is then created, and those are both sent to the CRP for services. All right, so meat and potatoes. Why competitive integrated employment, right? Why is that the goal? This is defined as employment that's integrated within the community, which pays at least minimum wage or a wage commensurate to the prevailing wage and offers those fringe benefits. So we get a lot of questions. Why is that the goal, right? And why are individuals being referred to CRPs, right? Because many individuals with disabilities encounter a variety of challenges, right, in achieving that. And so community rehab partners are well, they really are our partners and provide that needed assistance to those customers to achieve those goals, right? During this process, I gotta move the thing here. Okay, there we go. During the process, right, the CRP does all kinds of things, as you know, right? And we're gonna, some of the different services available and categories are on the next slide, but you employ a variety of techniques trying to get that individual into their chosen career goal, right? Not just necessarily a job, but a career goal. Some of these contracts can include customization, right? Both for the customer and the employer. The employer piece is really under that customized employment contract. Job retention, so important that it is built into those contracts, right? Those phases and milestones build on that retention. And of course, our favorite, those 8-week staffings, those provide the check-in for the customer, DRS, and the CRP. That's when you're going to talk about all the things, issues, concerns, things that are going well, possible changes, right? So this, like I said, is more of an information slide. All of these services are further defined within the contract and within the program manual. But assessment, job coaching, job development and placement, job retention, skills training, and career development services are all things that are contained within those job placement contracts. So we're going to move into understanding contract types and requirements. So as you know, we have those 3 contract types. So let's talk about customized employment. That is our newest contract type. And really it is to find the unmet needs of the employer and match with those skills and abilities of those customers that are coming to us, right? Sometimes those niche places, right? So somebody who, I heard this example one time, right, who is really good at numbers and sorting, and they ended up helping a pharmacy in a hospital, right? Pharmacy didn't necessarily know that they needed that service, but that's a great example of customized employment. Customers have to be certified as most significant and needing those support employment services. 9 phases. Each one of those has an expectation that must be achieved in order to bill. All of those are, of course, listed in our manual, right? And in the contract. somebody has to have ACRE certification. That's a change for fiscal year 25. Before it has always been ACRE, but before we said through Griffin and Hammes or Markle and Associates. So this year, beginning July 1st, it's now ACRE certification, which opens up some other providers. And then anybody needing continued support after those phases can participate in the cleverly named continued support option. That's CSO. All right. So if you have questions, always feel free to I don't know that I closed my little window where I couldn't see you because it was covering my PowerPoint, but let me know if you have questions already. And we can also take them at the end. So support employment contract, very similar to customized employment. But the customers that are participating in supported employment may not need as much customization, right? They may be able to find work in more of a mainstream area, but still requiring that intensive long-term support. They also have to be certified as most significant, qualify for supported employment, and there are 8 phases. And each phase, of course, has a listed expectation. They also are eligible for that continued support option after the phases. Because in each of the customized and the supported employment contract, the support phases, so after the customer finds employment, they last about 45 weeks of support on the job. And so that does not go up to the total available time for supported employment. So there are continued options. And always a note, hey, you don't have to start in Milestone before receiving SAP. Okay, just a couple programmatic reminders, and I am going to speed this up a smidge. They customize employment and supported employment, right? You have to be in most significant category for needing services. Support's available up to 24 months as needed. And then staffings are tied to certain phases under both contracts. And then we'll talk more about staffings in a little bit. But underneath customized and supported employment, per federal regulations, right, that case must remain open for at least 90 days after employment supports have ended. Okay, so no VR spending for 90 days. And that's really to ensure that that individual is not in need of further services. And if they are, right, we have this continued support option. So that's why that 90-day time frame is so important, because in order to participate in continued support option, that case must remain open, and those staffings and supports must continue. For customers in need, we said that it needs further support up to 24 months. And this is paid at an hourly rate through the local DRS office. Okay, so the Milestone contract is a contract for individuals that do not necessarily need that long-term intensive support. So they are able, with supports, to obtain and maintain at least 90 days of employment. And supports are needed to obtain and achieve at least 90 days of stable employment. So stabilization is required, and in the program manual, you will see that stabilization is required at all milestones. So super important. And then of course we pay $15.45.90, and job coaching is included, so it's not paid separately. Okay. So let's talk about some requirements documentation, because that's everybody's favorite topic, no doubt, right? And some of this, like the next slide you're going to see, is really just for your information for reference, okay? So this lists the initial contract paperwork that's due. So make sure you've turned in all of those forms for this fiscal year. And then if you have an amendment, we have what paperwork is needed for an amendment as well. So just reference. So we're going to talk about staffings. They must be held, right, at minimum every 8 weeks, beginning at the time of the referral to a CRP. They will include the customer, DRS staff, CRP staff, and anybody else designated by the customer. And this will be continued throughout the lifetime of the case. So all 3 job placement contracts require staffings every 8 weeks, even if the customer is not employed. So we get that question. If the customer is not employed, yes, because you are goal planning, you are problem solving, you are brainstorming, all kinds of things. I see the number on the chat going up. So are there questions?
Kristen, there's a question in the chat, but Robin's addressing.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So, staffing note. So to accompany that staffing, right, a staffing note is required. So it includes everyone that was in attendance. It talks about the additional services that may be needed, or it talks about the progress of the customer, what services are needed or, can be discontinued, things like that. And the CRP is responsible for completing and sending that to DRS and obtaining the signatures. Okay. So super important, staffings must occur every 8 weeks from the time of the referral to the CRP through the lifetime of the case. Billing, just a few billing reminders, right? Group billing sheets due monthly by the 5th working day of the month. So 5th working day does not mean day 5, right? So we say, oh, it's due the 5th every month. No, 5th working day, right? So the 5th working day of this month, July, is Monday the 8th. In order to decrease any missed billings, advisor must be CC'd. Super important, right? And this also addresses if there's no billing, or another slide does as well. So just kind of a reminder. What has to accompany that billing? Progress notes. They're also required monthly to be sent in with the billing. And the progress notes really needs to summarize. So we gave some pointers in here how to share that information, what should be included, but it's really kind of a for your reference kind of a thing, okay? And then I just have a couple more slides before Damien is taking over. So billing reminders. Make sure you're sending in those progress notes with that billing, because we have to know how those customers are doing. If billing is denied at the local office, right, that's going to be communicated with you and the contract advisor, right? If we, in our unit, deny billing, we'll also communicate that. Additional billings should be the exception and not the rule. So every single month, we should not be getting an additional billing. $0 billings, we talked about that a little bit. Just an email to the contract advisor, right? That's all that's required. And then one thing that we introduced last fiscal year was having an additional individual both at the CRP and at DRS to assist with billings if someone is on vacation, right? We want to be able to continue and move things forward and be timely with it. So just something to think about. And my last part for now is to talk about the importance of vocational goals and billing. So we have recently been running into a lot of issues where vocational goals are not matching on all sides, right? So internally, we have 3 spots where vocational goals have to match, as well as the IPP that the provider sends in. So I ran into one where the plan was the IPE was written for dining room assistants, and the employment was childcare. So 2 totally separate things, right? So without that updated plan, updated assessment to ensure that that's really the appropriate vocational goal, right? We can't pay that. The feds come in and they say, why would you pay for services on someone who has a stated goal of working in a dining room? They're working in a childcare, you know. So that's something that we've really noticed a lot more recently. And we know people change their minds. We're not saying they can't change their mind, but we have to make sure that everything is updated and that IPP, if that goal changes, must also be updated. And there is information in a manual, of course, right? And then if there are discrepancies, we do have to hold on payments. We can't, you know, pay for something that doesn't match. We have to ensure that customer has approved that. So, okay. I see the chat's blowing up and I really want to get in there, but I'm going to keep on going. So, Damien.
Okay. Hello, this is Damien. So we've kind of worked through the different.
I know. I'm working on it. My mouse is all over. Okay, gotcha.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. So Kristen has kind of walked you guys through the eligibility process, the staffing process, the billings that are required to move things along the way. I'll address some of the contractual things. Some of the items that we look at as progress is made through the initial contracts. One of the things that we're constantly monitoring is contract utilization. So how much of the contract is being used and throughout the year. And I utilize this information along with the contract advisors to determine if adjustments are needed to the contracts along the way. So there are certain things that we look at. Obviously, everything is broken down into a fiscal year in terms of the contract. So about a quarter of the way through through the fiscal year, we're expecting that you're about a quarter of the way through your contract utilization. If you guys are superseding that and the desire is to increase the contract, then those conversations can be started as well. But these are just generic benchmarks that we're looking at to determine whether or not adjustments are needed to the various contracts. Next slide, please. Kristen?
I'm here. I'm pushing the button.
Okay.
Okay. So hang on. No, I really am. I'm telling you. Okay. So, all right.
Okay.
I don't know because I was there the whole time.
No, we're okay. It switched, so we're good.
I also can't mute myself, so there's that.
Okay. So as we're looking at contract utilization, we're also monitoring timelines. Earlier in the presentation, Kristen reiterated the requirement of having the 8-week staffings. She also included in the slides, and it's also reiterated in the manuals, what's required to meet those job placement outcomes, right? So for milestone, that's 90 days of employment with stabilization. For supported employment, there are 8 different phases. For customized employment, there are 9 different phases, right? We won't belabor that because a lot of that is readily available for review, but when we're having conversations with different contract holders, I like for them to understand that there are, especially with the supported employment and customized employment contracts, given that 8-week staffing requirement, needed to move beyond phases once job placement has occurred. There are certain points in the year or throughout the fiscal year where certain phases have to be met in order to get to phase 8 or phase 9 by the end of that contract period, right? So these dates, I believe, are slightly off, but you guys will get the gist of why these dates were included, right? So if a 90-day placement, if 90 days of stable employment is required in order to receive a milestone outcome, if you work backwards from June 30th, then that'll get you somewhere to around April 1st, April 2nd. I know we have March 30th listed, but you get the gist. So somewhere around the beginning of April, I'd say about April 1st, in order to meet that 90-day requirement by June 30th, employment and placement would have to be established. The same goes for the customized and the supported employment. If we work backwards in 8-week cycles, then we're able to more accurately realize that if a person hasn't reached job placement in day 5 of employment by September 23rd, roughly, when I double checked it, then it would be impossible for them mathematically to reach that phase 8 by the end of that fiscal year. There are a number of considerations that are built into our program that allow for carryover and a number of things in terms of claiming those phases or unused milestones. That's a conversation for a different day with the contract advisors that are handling the contracts, because they can guide you guys through that information so that when that placement and stability has been reached, that those final phases can be claimed. Next slide, please. So there are different considerations that can be made when contracts are established. Amendments, modifications, final reconciliations. We will explain to you guys what amendments, the distinction between amendments and modifications, and final reconciliation. So the amendments ultimately are any changes to the contract that changes the amount. Well, if we can go back to, I'm sorry, Kristen. So as we see, there are certain dates that are established in terms of requesting these for these different requests. So amendments have to be requested prior to April 1st. Modifications have to be required on or before June 30th. And then final reconciliations, those are due by the 5th working day of July, not the 5th of July, the 5th working day of July. And all of these are outlined in the manuals and communicated throughout the year in the different provider meetings. Next slide, please. So when we look at amendments, ultimately an amendment is anything that changes the amount of the contract, right? A contract can be amended up, right? That's what most providers are hoping occurs as they supersede the initial expectations and they're serving more and more customers. Then the request is often to increase their initial contract to actually serve more customers. Amendments can be considered as funds allow, right? But just as contracts can be amended up, contracts can also be amended down. This is never a decision that's made for a provider. This is a decision that's made in consultation with providers, because there are times when there are staffing issues or other concerns where providers feel as though they're going to have difficulty meeting their initial contracts, right? In those instances, a provider may feel more comfortable with a smaller contract and would like to be able to best utilize that contract instead of using instead of leaving a ton of money on their contract. So contracts can be amended up, they can be amended down, but remember there are deadlines in order for those requests to be submitted. Next slide, please. There's an entire approval process that usually starts with the provider initiating contact with your respective contract advisor. You all have those initial discussions to outline the needs, and then those contract advisors generally meet with me, where I scrutinize the request, to be honest. I have to make sure that we're not over obligating contracts. I have to make sure that the requests are actually attainable and feasible. So there's a great deal of discussion that generally takes place between me and the advisors. If there are any concerns, that contract advisor will share them with the different providers along the way. But once we've agreed to something, that's just the initial step. There are additional approvals that are required beyond my level of approval. And once those approvals are received, then the amendment is actually approved, and then it has to be fully established, signed off on before those funds can be utilized. Sometimes the process, I think recently, I'd say over the last year, we've made some adjustments to the process where the reviews are taking place rather quickly, but given the levels of approval that are required and the analysis that takes place and the discussions, it could take up to in excess of 6 weeks. We have to say that, right? Because it can happen, but I think that we have been very successful at making those decisions before that time frame. Next slide, please. So we talked about amendments, which changes the actual amount of the contract. A modification is slightly different. The contract amount doesn't change, but the pricing components change. So as we indicated earlier, we look at a milestone contract. It's broken down into 15-day requirements, 45-day requirements, and 90-day requirements. As providers' needs shift, and they may need the ability to bill for more customers under certain milestones, that can be shifted around without changing that dollar amount. The same goes for customized employment phases and supported employment phases. As providers discover that they need to be able to bill for more customers under certain phases, they can request a contract modification. There are less approval layers there, but just like with the amendments, that first line of discussion is with the contract advisor, and then I'm added to the analysis, and then Kristen is added in for an additional review as well. But the amendment changes the amount of the contract, the modification changes the details without changing the amount. Okay. And that's the approval process that's outlined. So that's in line with what I just shared. So next slide, please. And when we're looking at contracts, we're finding that the best way to stay on top of things is to meet quarterly, to have the advisors and the providers meet on a quarterly basis, right? Because that way, if anything is missing, if there are any concerns, we can actually address them along the way and try to make adjustments as needed. At the end of every contract period, that final reconciliation must occur. That final reconciliation is pretty much saying, yes, our numbers match your numbers. Our payment, we've been paid for everything that we provided. We're good with it. The checkbook is balanced. That's that documentation that says we're all good to wrap up this fiscal year and then to go into the next contract period. That final reconciliation that takes place at the end of the year is super important. That's why those quarterly check-ins help a great deal. It's easier to review the pieces along the way than to review everything all at once. So we try to do that with our providers on a quarterly basis to make sure that the checks and balances are in place. Next slide. Final reconciliations are so important because once that document is completed and signed, then there is no turning back. So if we're reviewing all of the payments, if we're reviewing all of the customers that were served, and you're in agreement, once that document is signed and submitted, then we can't go back if you're discovering items that were missed. So that's why those quarterly check-ins are important. That's why ensuring that these final reconciliation meetings are occurring and that everyone is analyzing things in a detailed manner. Okay. So there are times when there is no unexpended money, right? You've utilized every penny that was available to spend. But whenever there's a balance on the forms, then that's addressed during that reconciliation. There's an actual form that's submitted to the different providers, and you will see an example of that form on the next slide. If you look at the first column, so just for a visual description, this is a picture of the final reconciliation form. There are 3 different columns with fields where we enter information into the first 2 fields. So in column 1, it's labeled total approved contract amount. That field is completed by a DRS staff person. So that second column is completed by the provider. It's labeled year-to-date expenditures. That's where the information in the provider's records, the provider enters it there. That third column is labeled unexpended balance. It auto-calculates, and that number should never be a negative number. Why? Because providers cannot supersede their contracts, right? So that will always either be a 0 or a positive number. But once again, DRS completes the first field in the first column. The provider completes the second field in that second column, and then that third column field auto-calculates. Next slide, please. Ensuring that things run smoothly is always a shared responsibility. There are so many moving parts, so many requirements along the way that even when we do our annual trainings, we remind individuals that it's DRS bears responsibility to provide certain documents and to address certain things, and providers share in that responsibility to ensure that they have what they need prior to providing services to customers, and that they're submitting the necessary items to be paid for the services that they're rendering. So when we look at the IPEs, the individual plans for employment, ensuring that those are current, ensuring that those are signed, ensuring that we're on the same page as to what the employment plan is for the customer, ensuring those staffings are taking place, employment information is properly entered, and just a number of things. So that communication is imperative, and those checks and balances along the way are imperative as well, between the provider, the local field offices, and of course our unit managing the contracts and managing the billings. Next slide, please. And then I'll hand it back to Krista.
All right, so mysteriously somehow I became muted. I swear my computer has a mind of its own. Okay, so we're going to talk briefly about the different TCRS rules because this is one of the requests. So, oh, of course, now my mouse doesn't work. I swear. All right, let's see. All right. So the contract advisor really is your first point of contact. They are your liaison, right? For any billing contractual questions. So you always start with them. They provide support both internally to DRS, externally to providers, sometimes others as needed. But really the main goal is to monitor and manage those contracts. So we listed out all the things that they do. And this is Kristen. I don't think I said that at the beginning. Right, reviewing and processing the billings. That's part of the biggest bulk of that position, right? Quarterly meetings, monitoring like that, like Damien said, that utilization, right? Are there amendments or modifications needed, right? But that's a dual responsibility as well, right? Um, Looking at budgets, spending plans, doing those on-site reviews, and processing those final recs and getting those amounts correct. That sometimes takes a lot of back and forth. And then one of the last slides we have is I wanted to, because we have a new section under TCRS. So we have the vendor support and technical assistance. We're going to call them section because I don't know what else. And of course, little Louie is barking. So you might have noticed some emails from Carla Jordan or Darlene Lloyd-Drake because they are under the vendor support and technical assistance. So they're notifying of initial and amendment paperwork, tracking anything that's missing. Carla serves as the lead for any CSA issues and connects with the provider and the OCA as needed. They are tracking so sometimes there are vocational evaluations needed, and then ensuring that any corrective action plans from those on-sites are done timely, that the on-sites are done timely, and then gathering all the information for start of fiscal year, as well as sending out those FAC meetings. And then we just have the contact slide, right? So always, I'm going to stop sharing. So always start with if I can get to the screen. Always start with your contract advisor. And if you need something, right, Damien and I are always here. But please start with contract advisors. And I'll come back on camera here to see if there's anything that we can help out with, as long as my computer participates in life. Hi,
this is Jen McDonough from, I'm one of the consultants that works with the project, and I had a quick question. We have been working with the different agencies and helping them in learning the different stages of supported and customized employment. And one of the barriers that they have come to us with is liability if an individual is completing a situational assessment. The business is concerned about liability, and if that job seeker were to injure themselves on the site, they don't want to allow a situational assessment because they feel like they would be liable. Now, in other states, that is not an issue because they fall under DRS liability. We were wondering, is that the case in Illinois, or how does that work?
So this is Kristen, and that is outside of my scope. So that is not something that we manage under the contracts. That probably is a question maybe for our bureau chief. I'm not sure. We can take that question back and get it answered for you, because I don't want to answer incorrectly.
Yeah, it limits their ability to complete discovery activities, situational assessments, things like that, which I totally get from a business standpoint, but we need to be in Virginia, we're able to provide documentation that says, nope, not your problem. VR has this handled. But if you all could check into that and get that back to Jim, he can get it back to all of us, or to Robin. That would be great.
Okay. This is Kristen. Thank you. We'll send that to the appropriate person and see if we can get an answer for you.
Hey, everybody, this is Kyle
Okay.
Menke.
Thank you,
I did have a
Kyle.
quick question. When it comes to the billing and stuff, is there like a document that DRS provides for each agency to complete billing? Is there a universal document that gets submitted for each type of billing, or how does that look?
This is Kristen. Absolutely, there is.
Okay.
We do, and the information is entered, and the billings information will auto populate per contract type. So if you need copies of the billing, oh gosh, so sorry. Please reach out to your contract advisor. They'd be able to get that.
Okay. And are those sheets separate for each contract, or do they all look the same no matter what contract it is, kind of?
So this is Kristen again. So each of the billing sheets has an auto populated function that populates the information for that specific contract. So
okay.
they're all different.
Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Very good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
And I did see a question in the chat at the end. I didn't go scroll all the way back. But
I'd like to maybe facilitate the QA so we can kind of keep
Oh,
it time under
certainly.
control. If we could help you out, Kristen. If we have questions in the chat, if that person could verbalize the chat, or if someone could assist with that, that would be great. I have a question while we wait to get that other question, Kristen. So if we want to reconcile a billing discrepancy or a concern about a billing that was denied, and here it is, the end of the fiscal year, right? So how and when or how can that be reconciled so that the agency can be paid? Is that a process?
So this is Kristen. So billing is reconciled either monthly or at that quarterly meeting. And since we final recs are due Monday. So now is the time to reconcile. Now, with that being said, if the billing was denied, whatever reasoning for that would have to be if it was the case wasn't compliance, or if the documentation wasn't provided, or whatever it may be, right? All that would have to be corrected and able to be considered payable before that can be done. But we're running to the wire.
Thank you. Other questions for Kristen and Damien? If you could open your mic when you speak, that would be great. You can leave your video off, or you can open your video.
Yeah, this is Jim. I in the chat, Nikki from AID asked, apologize if we missed this, but where's the actual application for the customized employment contract? And this information was really helpful.
Right. So this is Kristen. So we have a new provider page to apply for a new contract. However, if you are interested in a new contract type and you already are a provider, right, you would reach out to your contract advisor. And Nikki, I do believe yours is already in process. So that question throws me for a little bit of a loop. So but you just reach out to your contract advisor. If you currently have a contract and you would like to add to the types of contracts you can provide. And then we do have the process outlined on a new provider page on the IDHS website that tells you what information would be needed and kind of the places that we are seeking new providers in.
Thanks, Kristen. Other questions for Kristen and Damien? You must have answered all the questions, Kristen, you and Damien. I will say that this contract discussion is a long time coming. It's been something that many of the agencies have been looking forward to. So I can only guess that you've answered a lot of the questions in your very thorough presentation. And I know that I'm looking here at the chat. I don't seem to miss anything. Kyle, are you aware of any other questions before we move forward and thank our guests for coming?
This is Kyle speaking. Not that I can think of. One of the questions that I could bring up is, where are the contracts? If someone wants to open, if they only have like a milestone and an SEP and they want to open a customized, is that just all in the CRP manual, or where do they find like the actual contracts themselves? That was a question that had arisen for me from my agencies.
That is a great question. This is Kristen. So we have the terms and conditions posted online on the IDHS website, right? So if you're looking for examples of what a contract is, entails, we have that on the IDHS website. If that's not what you're asking me, ask me again, and because I'm hoping I answered your question correctly.
Like, how does someone find the actual contract? Like, if they want to start a customized employment contract, how do they find the document that they need to complete in order to start that process?
So this is Kristen. So there's a new provider page that gives all of that information. There is not a document per se, but there are a lot of documents that are required in order to start that. So the new provider page has all of the information that anybody who is interested in starting a new contract will need.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
Yes, absolutely.
On that page that I just sent to everyone, there is that one of the first items is the community rehab program manual, but it also includes other information about how to establish contracts, right? So that information is on your websites. Thank you. So I just had a question about our contract advisors, Kristen. We all, I think, should know the names of our contract advisors. Is it, wouldn't you suggest that maybe we should always, have good relationships and rapport with those advisors, and maybe have, opportunities for those advisors in the ESs and, to have conversations together about the contracts? I don't know how much contact that the agencies and the ESs have with their advisors, but I think that's a good, I love that you said start with your contract advisors. So that relationship, when you say, is extremely important.
So this is Kristen, and then I'm going to kick it to Damien. But woven through this presentation, right, we talked about the collaboration and communication between the provider and the advisor.
Right.
So absolutely, right. Those quarterly meetings, right. So they would absolutely have communications and contact with providers, plus the monthly billings. Damien, I'm kicking that to you for any additional information.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is Damien. The quarterly meeting, at least quarterly, gives you that opportunity to kind of do those check-ins. But if they should always be available by phone, email, to answer questions along the way. Mm-hmm. If there's difficulty working with any of the advisors or getting a clear answer, then I would be the next step in the process. All of the contract advisors directly report to me, and if assistance is needed, I'm a phone call and an email away as well. But those relationships are imperative, right? Just as relationships professionally are imperative to making sure that things move along smoothly and thoroughly. So, but don't hesitate to include me if needed, or sidebar me if needed, because the goal is to serve as many customers as we can throughout the state of Illinois. However we need to get that done, we'll get that done.
Yeah. Thank you, Damien and Kristen. I'm asking for final questions now, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kyle. Okay, final questions. No final questions. I want to thank Damien and Kristen. Kristen, you both have given us just a wealth of information. I got a few texts while you guys were talking, and people were saying, "Man, we're so glad that this is finally being provided." So I appreciate your being here and all the information that you have given us today. So, round of applause for our guest, and you can either stay on or disconnect, but we certainly appreciate your coming. And for me, it was great to see you both. So great.
And
Thank you.
Bye,
thanks for
guys.
having us. Yeah, thanks for having us, Aletha. And if there are questions beyond today, don't hesitate to reach out. We gave you a ton of information the day before a holiday. So
Well, we have it recorded, and so we can go back to it, and so we certainly will make everybody aware of that. That's going to be on our SWTC website, and so we thank you both for making sure that you are going to be accessible to us, and we really appreciate you guys. Thank you once again.
Thank
See
you
ya.
so much.
all right.
Bye.
Bye now.
All right, I'm going to turn the program over to Kyle.
All right. Thank you, Aletha. Thank
You're
you,
so
Kristen
welcome.
and Damien. Really appreciate that. Lots of good information there. We are going to move along now to our customer profile. So this week, or this month, I should say, we are going to be talking about a customer from AID. There she is. There's our friend. So I'm going to start with this slide and talk a little bit about Paula because she's one of the first clients I ever met for SWTC. And then I'm going to hand it over to Tara, the employment specialist at AID who worked with Paula. So just something about Paula. She was one of the first clients I ever met in SWTC, in AID. I met her while she was at the workshop, while she was working. She was very forthcoming, very easy to talk to, very warm personality. As you can see in the picture, she's just a joy to be around. And one of the first things she said to me, after we had a slight introduction, was that how bad she wanted to work as a bus aide. How something that she had done in the past for a little bit of time. She had a friend that did it, and that she really wanted to work with kids. And that was just her dream job. So here she is, Paula Little. She's making sub-minimum wage. She's an adult. She works for Safeway Transportation as a bus aide. So she is working on the bus with a small group of individuals, kids, traveling back and forth from where she lives. And her first route was going out to Easter Seals in Chicago. She's making $15 an hour, and her schedule varies between 27 to 35 hours a week. And then I will let Tara give you the rest of these slides here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tara. I am Paula's employment specialist. So just a little bit about Paula's team. We work with the DRS counselor, Anna Arminu, and we meet with her every 8 weeks just to review her case and talk about how things are going with her job. We also work with Kyle. Mostly me. We talk quite a bit about things that are happening with her on her job. If I have any questions, I'll reach out to him and he'll help me, be in touch with the right people or take the information and figure things out for me. She also has a case manager, Chelsea Williams, who I update often about anything that changes with her job or with her case. She also has a great support with her cousin Kathy. She's very supportive with everything that goes on in her life. And I recently got to sit down and talk with her about some things that are happening at her job. She's just very, very supportive, and I think that's important for Paula to have with family. Next slide. So Paula has a milestone contract, which is the 15, 45, and 90 day. Her referral was sent on 1/18 with her eligibility on 3/7 as well as her IPE on 3/7. The things that we sent out with the referral are the vocational profile, the functional limitation checklist, her disclosure, IPP and contracts, and her proof of disability. Next slide. So, like Kyle said, Paula got a job at Safeway Transportation Services, which is a bus company that services children with disabilities in local areas to and from school. She is a bus aide. She monitors children and just provides extra supports that they may need. Working with Paula in the beginning, like Kyle said, she was very vocal and sure of what she wanted to do, and that was to be a bus aide. And she had 10 years experience in that, so that's what she wanted to do. And we talked a lot, and she just kept going back to that's what she wanted to do. And so she came to me one day at one of our meetings and said that she knew somebody that she used to work with at her previous job that went to Safeway, and they told her to come in and apply. So that's what we did. So Paula really took charge of her job search needs for sure and landed herself a job. Next slide. Okay, so Paula's employment barriers. In the beginning of her employment at Safeway, it kind of worked out. She was originally set up with Kendall County or Kendall Transit Services, which is a bus service that services people with needs to appointments or jobs or whatever need that they have. So she was already set up with that before I started working with her. But coming into Safeway, working with the coordinator there, she said that her driver that she would have on this route that she picked will be able to pick her up from home and take her home after each route ended for the day. So it worked out really, really well. Towards the end of her regular school route, her and I went in to look at summer routes, and she picked one, and we were told that they were no longer doing that for the bus aides. So Paula and I were scrambling to figure out how she was going to get to and from work now, which, like I said, she was set up with Kendall Transit, so we didn't think that was going to be an issue. I did reach out to, or let me backtrack. Paula did let me know that she once or twice took Uber at her previous job. Her cousin helped her set up for that. So I did look into that and sent an email to her case manager. And she informed me that she did and that I would need to talk to her cousin with that. So I started with Kendall County Transit. They weren't much of a help. Their schedule was all over the place, and it just wasn't going to be working for Paula and her schedule. So I sat down and had a meeting with her cousin, and we just looked into it, and it was just going to be very, very expensive for her. So yeah, so she decided that she was going to get her the first 2 days of her summer route to work, and then I was going to figure something out with her DRS counselor, which we did, and we figured out or found out that they weren't going to be able to help us because she was already working something with the payment or something. But it ended up happening that Paula was no longer needed for her summer route. So I don't know if I should say it worked out for good, but she's no longer going to be working for the summer as of now because her route got changed to somewhere further or a different company. So yeah, that's for the transportation barriers that she had later on after employment. But with her SSI benefits, they are currently in the process of trying to get her approved for that. When I sat down with Paula and her cousin, Paula informed us that her case manager let her know that they're now at 90% on the approval track. So hopefully that works out with her. Kyle has also been working with Chelsea as well to just give her some insight on questions to be asked and things of that nature. Next slide. Lessons learned. So working with Paula definitely taught me to really take time to um, reach out more to the surrounding, like their support team, family, their house staff, things of that nature, to figure out what connections they may already have um, with employers that I could be missing or just didn't know. So that's something that I definitely learned with working with Paula because she had connections already with people that moved on to Safeway. So that was definitely a lesson for me. Um, so I do meet with Paula weekly unless she needs me more. I just follow up with her how things are going on at her job, and if she needs any of my assistance, she always tells me no, she's got it, and she'll let me know. Paula is very, very independent, and she knows what she wants, so she takes the lead for sure. And I'm just there to let her know that I'm there if she needs me. Next slide.
All right, I'll jump in here. So as Tara said, I've been working with Paula, Chelsea, um, our Social Security disability benefits consultant, trying to help Paula navigate her case because she, getting that job, she is losing some of her benefits. So we're trying to figure that out to ensure that doesn't happen, obviously. So I ended up talking to Paula about the job, about what she likes about it. So you can see here, she likes working with students. That really brings a lot of joy to her. She thinks that, the students take a liking to her, and it seems like that is the case. She told me a story about how there was a student on the bus who wouldn't really talk to anybody, wouldn't talk to the bus driver or any other, any of the other people on the bus. And then slowly over time, this person slowly opened up to Paula and started speaking with her, and she was able to bridge that gap and create that relationship with that person. And she was just extremely tickled by that. We can go on to the next slide. So yeah, big thing for everybody, right? She likes getting out of the house. She likes feeling needed. She likes performing her job. It sounds like Safeway has been a really welcoming job site for her. Working alongside the ES to, find different bus companies, help create a resume, and go get through that application process. I did ask her about the workshop because she does not go to the workshop at all anymore. And she said she did miss it. She missed, her friends and being around people, but she was extremely happy to be working in the community. And I thought she was really sweet when I asked her about her paycheck. She just kept telling me, I'm just saving it for a rainy day. I'm saving it for if my cousin needs money. She didn't have any big plans for a vacation or to do anything much with it other than just keeping it up, keep getting money. So I'm really hoping that we can sort of help navigate her benefits in this time that she's off during the summer so that when she starts back up, she has her job, all her benefits stay in the same place, and she's sort of more aware of how that works along with her support system, her cousin Kathy, and Chelsea. So shout out to Paula. This also just kind of highlights that if you do have questions about Social Security disability, please bring them to your CRS team. We are more than happy to help. We will, contact people. We will communicate. We will help anybody get through that process. So I think the next slide is just if anyone has any questions about Paula. And we are approaching our time here. I'm sorry, someone was speaking.
I'm sorry, Kyle. This is Courtney. Just wanted to say, kudos to Tara and Chelsea and Paula and you. What I like in the presentation is that Tara mentioned more than once that Paula was in the driver's seat. And I think that's just another lesson learned for all of us, just to remember to facilitate the process in which the individual is navigating, their goal. So, sometimes because we're in this field, we tend to do for. And so I think this is a really good example also that we are supporting them and facilitating that, and they're doing it. So excellent work. Thank you.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Working alongside someone's motivation when they're motivated and they can pair it up with, a support person is, that's a huge benefit. Okay. We got like 12 minutes here. So we're going to move on to the next activity. The next portion of the COP will not be recorded.